Manuel, thank you very much for this opportunity to be with us in this interview.
Thank you for inviting me.
We're very happy to count with your contribution and to learn from your experience and your wisdom, and then we can share some of your thoughts with those watching us. So basically, at NGAP Education, we are devising a program for younger and maybe not so young people and how they should handle their careers. We're now in a very difficult phase with this pandemic crisis, but then the following economic crisis we can expect. And we've been through various crises before, so I think we can share some of our learnings from the past and also from your personal stories that can be useful for people to be able to cope with their careers. So maybe, Manuel, maybe you'd like to start off with a few words about yourself, who you are, what you do, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay, my name is Manuel. Thank you very much once again for inviting me. I studied most of my life in English school in Lisbon, and then from very young decided that I wanted to work in the business. I wanted to work in business, basically. So didn't know I wanted to become an entrepreneur, but basically I thought I wanted to work in a business context. So applied to business school in Lisbon, Universidade Nova, School of Business and Economics. While I was there, I started noticing that potentially I didn't really know what I wanted to do within business. So I thought that the best step to get there would be strategy consulting. So, and I remember that it was a pretty tough place to start because of what they demanded and the prerequisites and all of that. So the starting point was having a high GPA, which I didn't have that high at that time. So I did what most people do to raise their GPA pretty fast, which was Erasmus. And so I went abroad to Sweden, which was an amazing experience. My first experience living alone outside my parents' place. And then, so went there for 7 months, was an amazing experience. Managed to raise my GPA up to 15, which was the minimum that McKinsey, BCG, and Bain were considering at that time. So did a first work experience at that time. My feeling was that it wasn't as common as in the US and in an international country and other countries for people to have a job experience before starting. In Portugal wasn't that common. So I did one in marketing in Banque BCP in Paris, marketing and HR, by the way, because I wanted to work in strategy consulting, but I also thought that an area within business which I was passionate about was HR. But that experience was enough for me to say, no, I don't want to work in HR, because unfortunately, most of what you learn in university about HR isn't really what happens in the real world. Changing quite a lot, but still many companies look at HR as a administrative and basically processes and administrative work, and they don't really look at HR in a strategic way. But we could be here all day talking about this aspect. So after that, and coming back after that, summer experience in Banque BCP, and after my Erasmus, applied to strategy consulting, and went to Bain & Company in Spain because I wanted to go abroad. Worked a few years based in Spain in Bain in several different areas, from telecom to tourism to healthcare, sports, a lot of private equity. Did my MBA, and I think something we'll be discussing in further ahead, which was in INSEAD in Singapore and France, in a time pretty similar to what's happening right now, which was the liquidity crisis of 2008 and 2009. So I was fortunate enough to be sponsored by my company, by Bain, into going to INSEAD, but I unfortunately saw many of my friends getting their offers removed at that time. So Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, and all of that. So I was fortunate enough to have a guaranteed job once the MBA finished, but many people went through a unique experience similar potentially to the 2001 dot-com bubble, but I was too young for that. But in the 2008, 2009 crisis, I saw lots of friends having offers, stopping looking for a job, and then having those offers removed because the companies didn't exist anymore. So did my MBA, went back to Bain a few months, and then got a great opportunity to go into the telecom media business, which was a company called TeamWee. In Portugal, they're a global media telecom business multinational based in Portugal. And I was the head of digital sales, a new business unit. I was heading a team worldwide based in Lisbon. And then after that, unfortunately, had health issues. So I had a burnout when I was 28, went to hospital. And that was an experience that had a deep impact on my personal life. So I decided I can't continue with this rhythm, which I was really, really, really excited and traveling all the time, making good money, achieving results, really, really wanting to drive the business to the next level, but it came at a huge personal cost, also health-wise. And was fortunate enough in those months to get 3 other offers. Went for Philip Morris, which based in Portugal, which gave me the lifestyle I needed. So after strategy consulting and after TeamWee, had a better lifestyle based in Portugal. It's a huge oil tanker, very well run, great management school. That's why I wanted to go. I decided for Philip Morris, which was, I forgot to mention this, but my dream was to become the CEO of a global multinational. That's what I normally tell people, that when I went to university, I wanted to work in business. I wanted to become the CEO of a global multinational. So everything I did was to get closer to that dream. So that's why I decided to go because I believe that a good starting step would be working in strategy consulting. My first step was getting into strategy consulting. So to get into strategy consulting, I need to get a good GPA. To get a good GPA, I did Erasmus. To also increase my probability, I did summer internship. I went to a good university. So all the steps were to get into getting closer to to CEO of a global multinational. Then after strategy consulting, did an INSEAD MBA, and after that went to TeamWee, where I was a global director, reporting directly to the CEO of a major multinational based in Portugal. Not well known, but they're pretty big. So I was getting closer and closer to that dream. Unfortunately, had to got that burnout that I mentioned. So moved to Philip Morris, where I reported to the board of directors. I reported directly to them in Portugal. Had a pretty big team in Portugal, but had a great lifestyle, to be honest. In parallel to achieving results and getting promoted, my brother challenged me to opening our own business. So in parallel to being in Philip Morris, I was also an investor and a partner to my brother in the business we brought, which was the frozen yogurt business. And 3 years later, he said, 2 years later, he told me, you either join me or I'm also going to get a job. So he really pressured me. I waited for my signing bonus to finish at Philip Morris, as well as the variable pay, etc. I think it's pretty common, but I had to wait because they gave me a nice signing bonus. Let's put it that way. And I would have to give it part of it. I would have to give it back, so I had to wait a little longer.
That's right.
I joined my brother after that, and we started building our own business. Right now, I would basically divide my professional life in 5 key areas, which I think 5 things I usually say I'm very passionate about. And I confuse my personal life with professional life in these 5 areas. It's work life, leisure, professional. My wife is the one that puts the frontier between work and pleasure, because for me, it's always pleasure. So she's the one that says enough. And these are the 5 areas, basically my business. So WEEEL, other people's businesses. So I invest, I mentor, I advise other startups and other businesses. Thirdly, I occasionally teach. So, or I get invited, or I teach to business students or entrepreneurship or strategy. Fourthly, I've got this very, very, very serious illness called Sporting Clube Portugal. So I ran for elections twice, and we got elected to this kind of Sporting Senate, which is the Conselho Leonino, and we got elected last time in an independent list. Let's put it that way. But we quit because of the Bruno Carvalho incident and all of that. But it's my dream to get closer and closer to the management of the, not as president or anything like that, but as a board of advisor or part of a management team. It's my dream to get closer and closer to that. And I'm actively involved in discussions. And fifth, it's my daughter. So Milton, you've got 3 children. I envy you. It's a daily negotiation with my wife to have more kids, but she's winning so far. And I've got a 2.5-year-old daughter, and we launched a blog that in 8 months have 15,000 followers. So it's anonymous. So it's called Manuel de Sobrevivência, so Survival Manuel. But it's anonymous. We don't put pictures of ourselves or my daughter, but it became a business. So with 15,000 followers, quite a few brands, schools, etc., want to get involved. But summarily, these are the 5 things that I'm passionate about professionally and personally, that I love doing, and that's what I do nowadays.
Wow.
Sorry for the long answer, Milton.
No, what a storyline, right? So I think it's a really impressive and very rich in terms of experience, in terms of learnings that we can take from there. Let me just go back to that because you mentioned you started off with that goal of becoming a CEO of a multinational, right? Yeah. Where's that dream now? Is it forgotten forever?
Milton, every time I get invited by Miguel to go and present in his classes, I usually say I wanted to become the global CEO of a multinational, right? And I always did things to get there. What I didn't know was that that multinational was mine, okay? So I'm currently co-CEO, let's put it that way, with the other partners in the business, running the show. We've got 35 stores in Portugal, where if it weren't for the coronavirus, we were on the verge of opening our first store in Spain, Cape Verde, France. This week, I'm going to have a conversation with England. So we were going to go international for sure, okay? Yeah. So I'm fulfilling my dream. I just didn't know it was going to be in my own business, okay?
Yeah. So it took a different twist.
But let's make it clear, Milton. I'm making a fraction. I'm earning a fraction of what I used to earn. But I've never been this happy. I've never been happier professionally than I am right now. Okay. Obviously, I expect to earn more with time. I'm owner of the business. I invest in the business. But I've never had such an amazing professional lifestyle. I don't even know if I work more or less than I used to work previously. But I've never been happier professionally.
Okay. Yeah. And I guess that's also part of the story, right? I mean, if you are in a place where you are very aware and conscious of the things you love and passionate about, I think you can withstand a lot more, and maybe it doesn't drain you as much of energy. Basically, maybe boosts your energy
for sure
further. Yeah,
there's an expression in Portugal which I think is snore. Now I can't remember, but basically very motivated. Yeah. When you're motivated, you work unlimited, and I really feel that. Okay, it's what I normally tell people, and my wife doesn't like to listen to this. I can be on a beach getting a call from my business, and they're not interrupting my vacation. Like for me, I'm fine. I like it. Or it can be on the contrary. It can be exactly the opposite. I can be working on a Sunday, on Saturday. I have no idea how many vacation days I take. I have no idea how many hours I work a week. I'm comfortable. Yeah.
So it's an integral part of your life, right?
For sure.
Yeah. But yet, I guess with a burnout, you had to learn how to listen to your body and listen to your energy levels and adjust accordingly, right?
Of course. There's a big component which is personal also, right? So I'm a kind of electric, enthusiastic, excited extrovert, but I had to tone it down. Obviously, when you're in an organization that puts you a lot of pressure, that also doesn't help. So you need to be able to understand what type of organization you're working. But that also helps you adjust the managerial style you're going to put on your teams, right? So I went through a lot in strategy consulting, also in Team WEEEL, MBA. you need, I feel that because of what I lived and what I went through, that's really helping me now. Okay. So obviously, you also start getting older. I remember many times in strategy consulting, waking up in the morning and feeling like I had been in a meeting all night, right? So, and thinking about those slides and those deliverables, and then you're not nervous, you don't feel you're under pressure or stressed.
You're in a continuous
Only if
level of tension.
you're always, and you're always on your peak, right? Only a few years later, you notice that, hey, I spent all those years in stress, and I didn't even know it. I remember when I was in Spain, and I would get home at, I don't know, 8:30 in strategy consulting. That's amazing, right? So in Madrid, I would get home at 8:30, and I would never forget, I had my Portuguese TV in Spain, and I would be watching Preço Certo em Euros, which is that lousy show. And I would turn it on and say, hey, Preço Certo em Euros, it's still day outside. And I felt, what am I going to do? I wasn't even used to getting home before dinner, right? And people were envious of my timetables of getting home before 9 p.m., which for me was okay. I felt like 12 hours was okay. I felt, okay, I'm not working on weekends and I'm working 12 hours. My friends at McKinsey were working many more hours than me. Many more. And for me, 12 hours a day was okay. Right now, 12 hours a day,
it's
crazy. Insane. If I have to do it, if I'm happy, being paid for a job to do 12 hours a day, nobody's going to be happy doing that. Or a majority of people won't be happy. That, okay.
It's again finding the balance and finding and learning again to read the signs, and often they go unnoticed. And that's what you said. You are in this continuous level of high tension. You don't realize how much damage you're creating to your body, to your lifestyle, to those around you, maybe, right? So, and I guess when you are on your own, it's one thing. When you have a family, it's another, right? So,
and it's easy to pass unnoticed the signs because you get paid really well. Let's be honest. When you're in strategy consulting or investment banking or other multinationals, you get paid really well. You travel a lot, which when you're young, it's something you like to do.
Love it.
I worked in 26 countries and lived in 11 until I was 31, which is something I loved. If I had to do that now, never.
Never.
I miss going abroad. I want to go international with my business, but I want to be based in Portugal. I don't want to be based in other countries. I want to be based in Portugal. I want to travel, but and those signs pass unnoticed because when you get well paid, you get recognized for what you do. You're traveling a lot, and you like what you're doing. You start forgetting about other signs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and then the other thing you mentioned, I mean, WEEL, of course, is taking off really nicely here in Portugal. We got this new sudden crisis. We have also the international expansions that you had to pause for a while. How do you look at this crisis? How do you look at the way forward? How do you cope with it? Also, I guess with the responsibilities you have.
Milton, let's be honest. I don't have answers yet because everybody's still trying to find them. Okay, and we're navigating through the crisis as we speak. What I can tell you was January and February were amazing. Like in most tourism, retail, in Portugal, my sales were up 30% January and February, which is historic. Okay, like for like, increasing 30% in sales is historic. One digit is normal, 2 digits and 30%. And I can't explain it why, because last year wasn't a bad year in January and February. This year, a raise in 30% with things were going really well. And I went with my wife on the 2nd of March to one shopping mall to eat a waffle from my brand. Okay, we had launched them recently and I wanted to eat them. I went with my wife on the 2nd of March. Do you know why I say the 2nd of March, Milton? Maybe you don't know why.
March 3rd was the first, right?
March 2nd was the first case in Portugal, a Monday. And my sales on that day went down 70%. On that day, on Sunday, they were up 30%. On Monday, versus last year. On Monday, the parking lot was empty in the shopping mall. And we went up, we had dinner. On Tuesday and Wednesday, things went up, recovered. But Monday was the first case. Prós e contras com Fátima Campos Ferreira. I remember watching it. And so we had cases all over the world. But official in Portugal, that was the first day. Next few days, things improved. But after that, with Marcelo, Antonio Costa, and all that, things went down drastically. And we immediately, in the beginning of March, implemented a contingency plan. And our contingency plan was, we designed it, and we had 3 key areas that we weren't focusing on the future. We were focusing on the long-term future. We were focusing on the short term. Yeah. We need to cut things now before this gets even worse. So we had 3 areas that we had to focus on: HR, rents, loans. We immediately implemented a plan, starting with HR. Unfortunately, everybody that had temporary contracts on the that still were on the trial period, we spoke with each one individually. We explained the situation, but they knew it. They were in the store and they saw that for every 100 euros that they were making, now they were making 10. So they knew it.
See it coming, yeah.
So we spoke to them individually, explained we have no other choice but to relieve you of the contract so we can save the other 100 jobs, okay? And the company, the viability of the company. First was the trial period, everybody in the trial period. So in 6 hours, 6 or 7 hours on a Friday, we relieved 12 people, which was really, 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 really tough, okay? 12 people on that moment had to lose it. We had no other choice. Everyone else, everybody that was on a maternity leave, obviously kept on maternity leave, leave of absence, still on leave of absence. And with everyone else, we started preparing the layoff because all our stores. So the government announced layoff beginning of March, but they took 3 weeks to actually say how it's going to work. So they announced the layoff, but they didn't give you the form to fill in, right? But we had everything ready, just waiting for the link for us to fill in and deliver. So we spoke to everyone before time saying this is what's going to happen. We're going to go into layoff. We're going to protect every job, and we hope to guarantee every job when things recover. But we have no other choice. We're going into layoff. So 100% of our employees, just a second, 100% of our employees went to layoff. Yeah. Second, so that was they kept their jobs, they kept salary, and we weren't getting a strain on our finances. So that was the first key area. Second key area, rents. We're in shopping malls. We immediately, all those rents got suspended. Now we're negotiating individually with each group of shopping centers, but no cash left the company to pay for rents. Some of them already told us we're not going to pay for those rents while the state of emergency lasts. Other shopping malls we're negotiating. So it's on a case by case, but cash is king. I think the key learning from here financially is cash is king, and everybody is holding on to cash. Secondly, thirdly, even before the government launched the initiatives on the about the loans, we had already spoken to our bank to say, hey, we need a 6 month. We need to delay 6 months, at least 6 months, and they already had this prepared because they know what's happening in Italy and Spain. Let's be honest, everything that's happening that we're implementing in Portugal is based with a few adjustments. So we know. So we basically stopped all the cash outflows getting out of the and we really want to save money for, unfortunately, the opportunities that will come when things starting coming back to normal. Now, let's be honest. The second part of your question is, this is how we're handling the crisis, is holding on to cash, full stop, and negotiating with every single supplier regarding the past. As for the future, we're adjusting completely. So we're expecting huge drops in sales. So even when things start coming back, is it going to be a 90% reduction? Is it going to be a 50%, 60%? It's going to be huge. How much? We don't know. And we're preparing for that. So we're renegotiating every single supplier and partner. Yeah. It's inevitable. It's inevitable. Yeah. And we're also taking this opportunity to innovate. So launching new products, testing new distribution models. In 7 days, we launched our direct distribution model via WhatsApp, and we expect this Friday. We hired a company yesterday, and we expect this Friday to have our e-commerce site ready. So for people to buy frozen yogurt, pay it, and we only deliver. Oh, yeah. But let's be honest, it's completely different in my business because margins are much lower.
Yeah.
Okay, and logistics is something that people take for granted. It's
Yeah.
a huge
It's
component of this business.
yeah. It's a
Uber
different game
Eats,
altogether.
it's a
Yeah.
huge part of the business. It's something we're still learning, but I don't want to. We're still innovating, and we're now focusing on other products that we can potentially send by mail and all that. So we're really innovating, and we're going to potentially change our business model. This can also be a huge opportunity for us. So we have 35 stores, of which 28 or 29 are ours. The rest are franchising, right? We sometimes franchise in areas where we don't want to invest directly, but we believe in the potential, so we let someone else invest, like Coimbra. Everything in Lisbon and Porto is for us. But now, one thing we learned from the crisis of 2009, 2010, 2011 is that people get unemployed, but they get lots of them get a good package.
Yeah.
Okay. So that will be a good opportunity for people to invest in opening up their new business. So we're
Like
as
a
we
franchise
speak.
model. Yeah.
So as we speak, we're preparing 40,000 euro investment model for WEEEL to open your WEEEL store quickly with a 40,000 euro investment, which is pretty low to open a new business.
Yeah.
Which has a good potential for profitability. So long answer to your question, how are we adapting? First of all, in the very short term, ensuring that we survive. In the long term, we're testing new business model and preparing for an opportunity that we believe that's going to arise, which is lots of entrepreneurs, which is what happened in 2011. Lots of street food came up starting between 2011 and 2015. Right. A lot of street food, a lot of new restaurants, people that had money from unemployment benefits. So we're preparing for that, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting, because I mean, if you would like to distill from what you're saying, there's this sort of entrepreneurial spirit somehow implicit as actually throughout your entire career, even at the very beginning when you said, I need to get a 15 average GPA, right? So what can I do? And it's always kind of navigating a bit on site while having this sort of end goal in mind, but your day-to-day is continually adjusting towards that goal. So it's like an ongoing, ever-evolving learning process and adjusting and readjusting as you progress. So that's a bit of a funny combination of a long-term sense of direction, but the path to get wherever that is, it's continuously changing, and you need to be.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, so it's interesting, that common thread, and I think it's very important, that message also of being adaptive, being flexible, being very also disciplined in being quick to react as well, and doing the right things even when they are hard, right? As you explained it so well.
I remember something, Milton, but maybe it can go in line with that, which was in NOVA we had Gabinete de Apoio a GAP. I don't know what it stands for at that time. Gabinete de Apoio Profissional, I think.
Yeah, so vocational support. Yeah.
For example, which was it wasn't what it is nowadays. Let's be honest, right? NOVA 20 years ago wasn't what it is done. Yeah. So I remember that at that time, if you really wanted to succeed professionally in getting your dream first job, you had to be very entrepreneurial in doing it. You couldn't rely on the tools that we have nowadays. But I remember that they're still valid for today, which is, I was very clear that I wanted to go to strategy consulting because I thought it was a great, and I think many people still today consider strategy consulting as a good starting step, for example. Yeah. And I remember at that time that investment consulting, the strategy consulting interviews are still case-driven, right? Yeah. So I first remember that I looked at, this is where I want to work in, so what do I need to get in here? So what are the type of interviews they do? You would be surprised. I also mentor lots of students, like I told you, Milton. You would be surprised by the number of people that don't look into, if they want to work in marketing or if they want to go into that company, they don't investigate of what is the type of interviews they do. What do they ask? What are they looking for? Simple things. And I remember that I called people. I called friends of mine that went to those interviews. And I asked them, what did they ask you? And how did you solve the case? I spent hours on the phone asking friends that had been hired by those companies. Yeah. That were in junior levels. And then when I finished those, I went to the ones that were interviewed and didn't get selected. And when I finished those, I always finished each phone call by asking, could you recommend me 2 or 3 other people that went through these interviews that I can call and ask the same questions? And I felt that when I got to the interviews, it was as if it was the 100th interview of the same thing.
So it's like you practice so many
I
times.
practiced so much because I was something that I really wanted. And obviously, if you really want to work for BCG, Bain, or McKinsey, your first interviews can't be at BCG, Bain, or McKinsey. Just like if you want to work, if you want to go play soccer for Sporting Benfica Porto, your first trials in your life are not going to be in Sporting Benfica Porto. You go to Casa Pia and Cova da Piedade and Montijo and whatever. And I'm surprised by the number of people that want to work in strategy consulting come to me, and their first interviews were at McKinsey or BCG and Bain. It's like, hey, not disregarding the other companies, but go to Deloitte, go to KPMG, go to other small boutique companies. You might even get good offers. I'm not saying that they're worse; they're just different. But practice with your friends and all of that. And I remember I did that. I really did lots of interviews, called lots of people, practice.
Yeah.
And when I didn't get invited, I remember those companies each have their recruiting strategy. For example, these companies, they do cocktails to get to know you, right? And they invite you and all that. And I didn't get invited because I had 14 GPA. I still hadn't done my Erasmus. I remember speaking to HR manager, I'm very interested in it. So they knew me. Obviously, I try not to be a pain in the ass, right? Because they also remember that. But they really noticed that I really wanted, and I was doing everything to go in. So 6 months later, when I applied with the GPA, they remembered. Okay, so the parallelism here is you really have to be an entrepreneur to become an entrepreneur, or to become
and that's
to get another job.
And that's absolutely right. I mean, that people often confuse being entrepreneurial as starting your business. Being entrepreneurial is this ability to go and search for alternatives and opportunities and possibilities, and to build your network. And I think it's a very important aspect you mentioned there, that you need to sustain and maintain that network for the future. So you're building your network when you need it, you're too late, right? It's preparing, keeping that network warm, and developing the relationships that will pay off in the future. That's very, very important. And move away from this taker mode, right? What can you give me? And then more in a mode of giving and trying to help and being there for others. That's probably a better way of building a network. And the practice, I mean, things don't come easy, right? So you need to work hard and to learn.
Totally agree.
So very good, Manuel. I think you have very, very, important insights for those listening to us. A very final, or maybe two final questions. I'll start off with this one. If you would look back to your professional life, and you could give your past self some advice about what you shouldn't do or should do, what would that advice be? So imagine yourself 20 years ago, you would be talking to yourself. What would you tell you?
20 years ago, I was starting university. If I finish university, I'm going to be really honest, Milton. People at my time, we were really on a rush to start working. Let's start working, great job, let's get promoted fast, and career. Time is the most precious thing we have. It really is time. And now when I hear people taking a gap year and traveling, I know we should be having this conversation 2 months ago, before coronavirus, but take time to do what you want. It's never I would have loved to have gone around the world and traveled for a year or 6 months. It's much tougher now to do those types of projects than it is when you're 19 or 20 or 21.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's the key thing. Even though I traveled a lot, 2 or 3 times a year, or or on vacation or working, I really believe that before starting to work is the last foreseeable opportunity you have to really take your time to do whatever you want. Because once you start working,
it's going to be hard.
It's going to be really hard, unless you do an MBA, for example. That's a unique opportunity for you to reset your career, and doctors can become managers and engineers can become consultants. You do an MBA and the company looks at you and say, okay, you've done your MBA, you can come and work for me. They consider that. But besides MBA or studying or stopping to study and to requalify your skills, etc., it's going to be very few opportunities where you can actively stop and saying, hey, what am I going to do before retirement? Okay. And so going back, I would have loved to have taken 3 months, 6 months, a year to just not study and not work. Just, I think the program, the gap year, potentially trying different skills, different companies, traveling. I mean, that is the thing I really, and when I speak to students right now, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, we would say, hey, a 1 year, if I was hiring someone that took a year off, I would think, why did this person take a year off? I would have a negative image of that. Right now, it's exactly the opposite. I completely changed my mind. Somebody that took a year off, I won't necessarily have a bad impression of somebody that doesn't do it.
Yeah.
But if you do it, I look at it positively.
Yeah.
Obviously, don't answer me that you spent your year playing PlayStation or at home, right? But obviously, I'm very curious to see what you did during the year. If you wrote a book, if you developed a blog, if you went and traveled, that's the thing I consider the most looking back. And the second key prerequisite that I tell people, I don't know if this is something very Portuguese, okay? People give too much importance to their first salary and their type of contract. It's sem termo, não é termo, or it's my first salary. I think they really need to consider other questions. Who's going to be your boss? What type of things you're going to be doing? What's going to be your development? What are you going to be learning? What happened to the person that was there before you? What kind of evolution do those people have? What do they learn? They should focus a lot more on learning opportunities, exposure, and all of that in the beginning. And I think people still keep looking a lot more on what the contract says. Hey, look at the salary. Wow. Look at, it's sem termo. I prefer a lot more.
What can you learn from it, right?
A temporary contract where I'm going to have an exposure to a CEO or director or whatever. Okay.
I think that's a very important advice indeed. It's more take your career from a learning perspective, especially in the beginning. You know, what can I take from this as a stepping stone towards the future? What can I learn from this, either from the managers that I will be working with or from the place that I will be working at? So I think this is a very important piece of advice. Actually, you already answered my second question that I had, which is what sort of final advice would you like to give? But I think that's a perfect way to end, is really emphasizing this learning attitude rather than just a salary or the specifics of your contract. I think that's a very important advice for us to give. Okay.
Thank you so much, Milton.
Thank you very much, Manuel. I wish you all the luck with WEEEL, and if there's anything I can do or we can do, we're all here to help. I promise to buy you some of your...
Eat yogurt, Milton.
Yogurt when it's available online. I will order some and have it at home with kids.
Thank you so much, Milton. Take care.